Hey there, I'm Ben Gideon from Gideon Asen, and today I wanted to share with you a presentation that we recently gave to a group of lawyers on building a new law firm. So, as a lawyer, you might think of yourself as equivalent to a technician who works in a factory making cars. We're not making cars, but we're practicing law, which is a skilled profession or trade. And that's very different from running the car company, or in the case of a law firm, starting and running your own law firm. There's simply different sets of skills involved in doing the craft or practicing law versus being the entrepreneur who has the vision and the desire and the drive to begin and to manage a new law practice. The technician is responsible for their own applying their own skill and craft to the tasks at hand. In our case, doing legal research and writing and managing cases or doing transactions, managing clients. The entrepreneur, on the other hand, is not just responsible for the work of the business, but for the entire business itself. There's a great book that makes this distinction written by someone named Michael Gerber. The book is called The E Myth, and it's one of the books I read when I was thinking about building my own law firm. And I would encourage others to read that because it's a wealth of information. And it really draws this distinction between the technician on the one hand and the entrepreneur on the other hand. And if you really love being a technician, rolling up your sleeves, practicing law, then why distract yourself by having to take on responsibilities to do other things outside of the practice of law that are required to run a law firm? So, one of the first questions you have to ask is, are you the technician or are you an entrepreneur? And should you start a law firm, or would it be a better fit for you to find a law job at a larger firm where you simply have to be the legal technician? In my case, my journey to starting my own firm began at the other end of the spectrum. I started my career working in that building called the Revlon building, which is at 53rd and 3rd in Manhattan, where the firm that I began my career with, called Latham and Watkins, which is one of the largest law firms in the world, was then located. Latham has moved its New York office to a different building. But at that time, we were located in the Lipstick building, along with Bernie Madoff, who was on the higher floors up there at the top, although I didn't know that at the time. Now, my office is located here at Pineland Farms in New Gloucester, Maine. So it's been quite a change in trajectory for my career. I spent 17 years in the middle, working at a smaller law firm, but a large plaintiffs considered a large plaintiffs firm of 17 to 18 lawyers in the state of Maine, where for about a decade I was an owner and on the executive management committee responsible for managing and building that practice. So ultimately, we decided to open our own practice. You can see that's our office behind me and my partner, Taylor Asen. So we're at the farm, but we're actually not in a farm building. We're at a real office building, but it's located at a farm. One of the things that's important in thinking about starting your own law firm is if you're going to start it with somebody else as one of your partners, which I did, it's really important to find the right person who's a good fit, who has a similar vision for what you want the practice to be, and has the drive and the energy and a skill set that's going to be valuable in helping to build the practice. I couldn't have found a better partner than Taylor for my practice, and it's been really great building this practice with Taylor. So the topics we cover in our presentation here are seen here the 6 things that I think are key to building a new law firm. So let's start with the mission and core values of the law firm. When you begin on a project, it's really important to know where you're headed. When NASA wanted to put a man on the moon, they had a clear mission of what all of that time and effort and resources were going toward the moonshot to have the first man land, plant that American flag on the moon. And NASA has a mission statement that describes the mission of NASA to drive advances in science, technology, aeronautics, and space exploration to enhance knowledge, education, innovation, economic vitality, and stewardship of Earth. And there's a set of core values that they buy into to help drive that mission. You can see them there. I wanted to compare that with another company whose mission is also exploration, but that has a different mission statement. You can see SpaceX, which, as you know, is the space company that was created by Elon Musk. Um, their mission is to revolutionize space technology with the ultimate goal of enabling people to live on other planets. And they have a slightly different set of core values. The first one being innovative, and then being a risk taker, inclusivity and diversity. So what's interesting is that both of those companies, NASA and SpaceX, are in the business of space exploration. But even though they occupy a similar field and a similar business, so to speak, the fact that they have different sets of core values and different mission statements is going to make those businesses quite different in the way that they operate. And you could imagine from SpaceX's mission statement and values that it's going to be much more focused on private market applications for its business, profitability of its business. The goal of enabling people to live on other planets is a very specific goal that can drive those other ideas of finance um, and risk taking. So, being a risk taker, having that as a core value, is somewhat different than the NASA approach, which is probably going to be a little bit slower, more plodding, but with a higher premium on safety and on the public impact of the decisions that it makes. So when you begin a new law firm, it's really important to outline your mission and your core values. In our case, we had a 1 day retreat where Taylor and I just talked about nothing else but what was going to be our core mission and what was going to be um, our core values for the new firm. And the kinds of things you want to address in a mission statement and a set statement of values for a law firm are things like, what geography do you want to serve? Do you want to serve your local town? Do you want to serve several towns? Do you want to serve a whole state, or maybe several states, or even the whole country? That's obviously going to drive how you build your firm. Are you building a firm for growth, where you expect to hire more lawyers and to hire more staff over time? Or are you building a firm that's really designed only for you, yourself, and whoever your immediate partners are, but there is no plan for growth? That's an important one. What kind of financial goals do you want to have for your firm? What kind of lifestyle do you expect to have for yourself and for your staff and your partners? In other words, are you going to be working nights and weekends? Is that part of the expectation? Or is the firm really a 9 to 5, 5 day a week operation? Again, that's going to dictate the types of people you hire the types of tasks and risks that you take on. What's your tolerance for risk is another really important question to ask when you're starting a new law firm. So I want to talk a little bit about brand. When I use the term brand, I'm using it as a description for what is the core thing that distinguishes you in the eyes of your consumers, your customers, and other lawyers in the community. Here's a television ad that's currently being run by a law firm. I'm going to show it to you and we talk about it in a second.
Seat number? This way. Thanks. Welcome aboard. Seat number?
When it comes to airplane seats, size matters. Oh, yeah, thanks. Same goes for your law firm. Um, Morgan and Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
The reason I wanted to show that television ad is because I think it reflects a trend we're seeing in the law and also in other industries right now, which is growth and consolidation, often across state lines. That's being fueled in to some degree by advances in technology and the internet, and the fact that geographic barriers no longer apply when a lot of the case acquisition that you do and even the work you do can easily be done using technology from any location. So, of course, you have to have lawyers admitted to practice in different states. But more and more, I think what we're going to see is that there are going to be larger firms. This firm happens to be in the area of personal injury, but I believe we're going to see that in a whole host of different fields that are going to try to make a play to consolidate the markets across the country and to build large national practices. So, where does that leave you if you're trying to build a smaller law firm? There's a town in Maine called Rockland. It's a very pretty coastal town right on the ocean. You can see the Google map here. A lot of tourists come there to vacation. There's a great resort called the Samoset Resort there that lots of folks come to visit. You can do water activities. There's also a lot of hiking in the area. And they've got, of course, like any community, a bunch of restaurants. On the one side of town, there's a McDonald's. On the other side of town, there's a restaurant called Primo, which is a very high end, fancy restaurant that one of their distinguishing characteristics is that they have their own farm and gardens on the premises, and they grow a lot of the food that they serve at the restaurant. So it's really kind of a farm to table experience, um, catering to those that are looking for a high end culinary experience. So on the one hand, you have McDonald's. The other hand, you have Primo. I think it's really important when you think about the nationalization and consolidation of the legal industry to compare the McDonald's and Primo models. And for every small firm, and when you're starting to build your own practice, to understand that it's going to be very hard now in the new era to compete if you're McDonald's. The national firms have a system down, and they're going to be better at some of the core functions that are simple and easy that allow them to compete across the board, probably on price like McDonald's does. If you're looking for a fast and inexpensive meal and you don't really value that much the culinary experience, you're not looking for um, the nutritious qualities of higher end food or the farm to table experience or the ambiance of a 4 or 5 star restaurant, then you're gonna go to McDonald's, and it's gonna be hard for some local restaurant to compete with that. On the other hand, there's a great market now for restaurants like Primo because there are a lot of people that they're not shopping simply on price. They're looking for value. I think what we're going to see with law firms is that these smaller niche firms, the boutique firms, are going to have to compete on value in order to succeed. And if you compete on value, that has advantages in terms of your financial model because while it's probably less than $10 for the McDonald's lunch on the left, for the Primo dish depicted there, you're able to charge $25-$30. So um, if you are able to provide the value, that can be reflected in the attorney fee that you charge because people are willing to pay for something that they value. The problem is going to be that when we talk about value, that's also very competitive in the new market. So this is my example of that. There are lots of different online um, video conferencing platforms. Here are 4 examples of different video conferencing platforms that exist, and there are many, many others. But what do most of us use? Most of the time, we use one platform called Zoom. How did Zoom consolidate so much of the marketplace for video conferencing? And I would suggest that the reason they've been so successful is that Zoom is just slightly better than its competition in certain ways. It's not better in all ways, but it's better in the ways that most of us are looking for an intuitive, relatively simple, and functional way to hold a video conference. There's just a bunch of things that Zoom does a little bit better than everything else. And that's what allows it to distinguish itself. So as lawyers, we have to think about what is it, if we're going to start a new practice, what is our value proposition and what can we do just a little bit better than everybody else, a little bit better than our competition. Because if we can do that and we can demonstrate to people that we can do that, then that's going to make us the Zoom of our market. And it's going to allow us to be the Primo of our market, charging a premium for the added value that we can offer as a law firm. When it comes to law firms, your brand is really going to be dependent on the field of law that you're in, because consumers for legal services are not monolithic depending on what kind of service they're looking for. The dog bite injury lawyer and that ad that you can see here is not going to be appealing to the folks depicted underneath that are looking for a consult on elder law services. Likewise, the folks that are seeking a criminal defense lawyer are not going to be attracted by the corporate types depicted in the corporate boardroom that are shown in the corporate law ad. So figuring out what is your core niche and how do you brand yourself in a way that appeals to your customer as a lawyer is critically important. And part of that is more and more, you can't be all things to all people. The era of the small town general law practice is largely dead. In rural communities, particularly in states like Maine, where I live, there still are some holdover general practice lawyers in small communities. And it's great to have that because those communities need those legal services. But more and more, particularly with the internet, particularly with consolidation in the field, you really have to have a niche where you stand out. Imagine you're website looked like what we see on the screen, there'd be so many mixed messages. No one would know what your brand is, and you would not distinguish yourself in a positive way from your competition. No one would even know what you're really good at, what you really do. So in our case, when we were starting our new firm, recognizing all of that, we're a plaintiff's trial firm. We do personal injury work, product liability work, and medical malpractice. But the area where we really distinguish ourselves, where we're really better than our competition and where we can really add value, is in the field of medical malpractice. And so when we opened our new firm, rather than running ads that listed all the different practice areas that we're capable of doing, we really wanted to focus like a laser on medical malpractice. What you can see on the screen is an ad that we've been running in a local trade newspaper that's received by most of the lawyers in our home state. That's a black and white publication for the most part, and with the exception of one other ad, we have the only ad that runs in that newspaper that's actually printed in 4 colors. We did that even though it was much more expensive because it goes along with our brand. We want to brand ourselves as sophisticated, high-end lawyers who can do complex, difficult medical malpractice cases. You can also see here that there are other elements of this ad that go along with the branding. For one, we decided when we opened our new firm to become members of 1% for the planet, which is a commitment that we will contribute 1% of our gross revenues every year to environmental nonprofit causes. And that allows us to use their logo as a member. And we are the only law firm in our entire state that is a member of 1% for Planet. And that communicates a few things. One is it communicates a set of values that may be important to other lawyers who refer business to us. It also communicates a sense of success and confidence that we can give up 1% of our revenues and feel confident doing that because we have a successful business model. We also have a QR code that allows referring lawyers to scan the code and go right to a page on our website that clicks through to a calendar app where lawyers can make appointments to talk to us about a case directly without having to speak to our staff. Of course, people can call us if they want to call us, but that indicates that we value the busy schedules and the time of lawyers who might want to refer us a case. And we're giving people a very easy and technologically savvy way to get in touch with us right away. The tagline really and the photo are meant to convey that two things that people need to know. One is that we do the medical malpractice cases, and the second is that we're friendly, accessible, and approachable. So if somebody wants to reach out to us, we're happy to hear from them. And my partner and I know many of the members of our legal community, of course, from our deep roots in the state, our work on committees and other organizations. And so the ad overall is meant to convey a brand of high-end sophistication, medical malpractice, technically savvy, confident, and accessible lawyers who are looking to refer a case can comfortably reach out to and talk to. I want to talk to you now a little bit about systems. We saw the mission statement of NASA and SpaceX, and it's great to have audacious or ambitious goals for your business. In fact, if you read Ray Dalio's book on principles, and Ray Dalio is the founder and longtime president of Bridgewater Associates, which is probably the most successful investment company in, or at least hedge fund in history. And he wrote a book called Principles, which I highly recommend. And he talks about the importance of having audacious goals, setting the bar high for your business. But goals without a plan to execute and to reach those goals aren't very helpful. So that's where systems come in. And when Michael Gerber in his book, The E Myth, talks about the entrepreneur working not just in the business, but on the business, really what he's talking about is building the systems that your business will need to succeed. One of the suggestions that Gerber has in the E Myth book is that when you're starting a new business, it's really important to identify all of the different positions that are required for that business to succeed, even if when the business begins, you don't actually have personnel filling each and every separate position. And the reason that you do this is because one individual may occupy different roles, but it's really important for everybody to understand who's doing what role and what responsibility each role has, and to hold people accountable for fulfilling those responsibilities. So when we started our new law firm, we created an organizational chart of all of the different roles or positions within our firm, even though when we started the firm, initially it was just me and Taylor and one paralegal. We then added an office manager, and we then added a second paralegal, and then we added an administrative assistant. The blue boxes are the areas where I'm assigned overall jurisdiction and responsibility. The green boxes are the areas where Taylor, my law partner, is assigned overall jurisdiction and responsibility. And we found that that's critical because it eliminates confusion about who has responsibility and who has ultimate decision-making authority in different areas. Our agreement is that I don't tread into his areas and second guess decisions or give mixed messages to staff, and he doesn't tread into mine. So you can see, for example, that we have a CEO of legal services, marketing and business development, and information technology, and that I'm responsible for all of those positions. So those are three different positions that in some firms, maybe a 100-person law firm, you might have different people in each of those different roles. In our firm, it's my job to do those three different jobs. In addition, of course, I'm also an attorney, so I have a fourth job. For each of the jobs, there's a written job description that the people occupying those positions are required to read. If they don't agree with the job description, then they're invited to offer edits or suggestions to revise or change it. But once there's agreement on a job description, each person, myself and Taylor included, are required to sign those job descriptions, and they go into the file on our electronic file on the computer, so everybody can see that and know what everybody is responsible for. So I have signed job descriptions for these three positions, and Taylor has signed job descriptions for these three positions. And then we've both also signed job descriptions for the job of attorney. So we've each signed 4 different job descriptions. Paralegals, so we have a senior paralegal and we have a non-senior paralegal. Our senior paralegal has signed the senior paralegal job description and the paralegal job description. And really the only difference between those two roles in our firm is that the senior paralegal also has responsibility for training new non-senior paralegals. Intake coordinator. So I mentioned that we hired an office manager. So right now, given the size of our firm, our office manager individual holds all of these 6 boxes here. So he serves as our intake coordinator, our marketing and business development manager, our IT manager, and so forth across this board. For each of those, there's a separate job description, which he has reviewed and signed. And you can imagine that someday, um, each of those positions, if we grow, will be filled by different personnel. And what's great about that is that our current office manager is learning each of those positions, and he'll be in a great position to train the staff that comes in if we end up filling other positions here with individuals. And our final staff person right now is our administrative assistant, who also serves as our medical records clerk, responsible for requesting and organizing medical records, which is an important part of the work we do, particularly because we're um, doing medical malpractice cases. So, in order to develop our systems, we have created something we call the operations manual for our business. It's a work in progress, and we're still drafting policies and revising them as we speak. But the way we organize it is on the Microsoft SharePoint. There are some many wiki type of software programs you can purchase to create operations manuals for your business. They can be keyword searchable and linked to, internally linked in ways that can be useful. We didn't feel the need to do that at the outset, and we may change later, but right now we're just organizing this, as you can see here, as the operations manual in our shareable SharePoint in our Microsoft system. So it's organized into 11 chapters, as you can see, and then we have a Word document index. And the Word document index is really where you would go to um, review the policies and utilize them, because it's just well organized by chapters and um, lays out each different policy. And it's clickable, linked up to the individual policies. So you can just go into the index and you can click on the links and it will bring you to each policy. So just by way of example, we have a set of policies on intake, and that applies to when new cases come to our firm. So here's our intake policy regarding incoming telephone calls, new leads, or referrals. Every policy we write lists what the policy is, and then at the bottom we have a reason for why that policy exists. We believe that the listing the reason is really important because it explains to those who are uh, using the policies why we have the policy that we have, why it's so important. So you can see with incoming phone calls, the reason for that policy is that it's intended to single out calls to the office relating to new leads or case referrals to ensure that they are triaged, managed, and followed up appropriately to maximize conversion of leads to new cases. Because of course that's how we make a living, is by getting cases in and managing cases. And it gives the policy there and explains how it works. And then within the policy there, it references other policies. So for instance, there's a conflict check procedure that has to be followed. That's a separate policy. You can click on that within this policy. It will bring you to the conflict check procedure policy. And similarly to the other clickable items there that you can see. So one of the important ways we organize our firm is through Monday meetings. And we have a whole policy regarding Monday meetings, and then a set of reports that we review at each Monday meeting. The way we organize our Monday meetings is that they're mandatory. All staff are required to attend. Everybody's under strict instructions not to schedule events over the Monday meetings. They're supposed to be sacrosanct. And they're the one time each week we all get together. We have an opportunity to go through new policies if we've developed new policies, and we also go through the different reporting mechanisms that staff are required to present at those meetings. We do it all electronically on a big video screen that everybody can see during the meeting. And it's all paperless. Our whole office is paperless. And each meeting is saved in the meetings file. And if you want to look at the reports that were reviewed at each meeting, they're there historically saved, and you can go back and look at them. And we use that one file during the meeting to pull up the reports. So in this case, the June 7th meeting, if you click on that, you get this series of reports, and different staff are required to come to the meeting with different reports that they prepare and they present to the whole team at the meeting. So our intake coordinator, who's also our office manager, as you now know, develops a report, for example, called the intake report. And he'll bring that. Here's an example of the intake report that goes up on the big screen. It's redacted here to remove names of the referring attorneys and the names of the clients. But generally speaking, you can see here that it allows us to go through all of the pending new intakes. They're color coded into different categories depending on different ways in which we uh, characterize them for follow through purposes. And we're able to see the date that the case came in. We're able to see a status report on what's happening with the case. If you were to scroll to the right, you could also see whether there's any statute of limitations issues and so forth. We also track key performance indicators, and it's really important when you start a new firm to identify what are the things you're going to be tracking to tell if you're succeeding in your mission as a firm. So we listed a whole bunch of key performance indicators or KPIs. Obviously, one of them would be things such as revenue, which is not listed here, but we have in other documents. But one of the things we look at are simply what are the total number of new cases that come into our firm each week, and where do they come from? For every case that comes in, we have to know the source of the case so we can track our marketing. We can see what lawyers are referring cases and so forth. So and then we review it at each week, and we can look historically to see where how are things trending. So this is just an example of that document we're looking at the week of June 7th. So our policy manual is really intended to cover the entire life of a matter from the day that the case were to come in, the new intake, as you saw before, all the way through trial. And it's the process of getting cases ready to try them and trying them is also something that we have developed systems in over the years. So you can see we've got a section for trial preparation that has a whole list of steps that need to be taken in order to prepare and get the case ready for trial. And just to finish up with the idea of systems, what we really want from our systems is to develop a way to provide high quality, consistent experience for our clients and customers that is not dependent on the idiosyncrasies of a particular lawyer or individual staff member. We recognize that over time, staff will come and go. Lawyers may even come and go from our firm. We want to ensure that whoever's here is able to follow a set of systems that allows our clients to get the same high level experience and the same good results, no matter who the particular individual administrative assistant or paralegal or attorney is who's handling the case. I'm going to talk a little bit about lawyer marketing. So here's an example of what might be considered, somewhat lowbrow marketing on a billboard. I think marketing there is a way in which you can market a law firm that is dignified and raises up the profession and educates your clients and consumers with high value content that does not need to look like the Saul Goodman billboard. Again, it goes back to your brand. This would not be consistent with our brand at our firm. There are some firms that are doing a more of a retail kind of, um, I don't want to say lower end, but maybe lower value added business, or where they're appealing to a different cross section of clients where maybe this is effective marketing, but it's not our brand. It's not the way we choose to market ourselves. So there's a lot of different ways you can market yourself. And I just want to cover some that I think are often missed opportunities for lawyers. You think of TV advertisements and billboards and things that can be very expensive, but you can also market in ways that are inexpensive and sometimes don't cost any money at all. Here's a series of articles, for example, we've been writing in the trade journal newspaper. And these articles are free to publish. We get an article like this every 2 weeks in the newspaper, and it consumes an entire page of print. If you were to purchase a full page advertisement, it would cost you thousands and thousands of dollars. This is free. But yet, so few lawyers take advantage of opportunities like this because it takes work. It takes time to produce high value content like this that is worth publishing. Another thing we've done is when we opened our practice, we did a mailing to all of the lawyers in our home state. Went out to thousands of lawyers, and lots of lawyers do that. They do send mailings out. But one of the things we really wanted to do was to provide a something that the recipients of our mailing would keep because it has intrinsic value, something that they're not going to just toss in the garbage. So what we did was we created this two-sided crib sheet, in a sense, for medical malpractice, which has a lot of valuable information that lawyers can rely upon if they are not experts in medical malpractice, but might get a call from somebody interested in a case, or they have a family member or somebody they know who has questions about medical malpractice. This is in one document answers a lot of those questions. So it has real value. This document was two-sided, as I said, and it was laminated in plastic. So it has a real solid look and feel. It's the kind of thing that just seems to have intrinsic value, and it's much less likely that people are just going to toss that in the wastebasket. Of course, what we're hoping is that for lawyers who have this, they'll keep it somewhere next to their desk. It's got our firm name on it. It's got all of our contact information. And if they do get that med mal case, and hopefully can answer some simple questions using this document, but then decide, well, they want to move forward with it, they may give us a call to see if we can help with that. When we started our new law firm, we also started a podcast. One reason we did that was because as we were trying to learn about how to build out our law firm, one of the ways in which we got much of our most valuable information was by listening to podcasts. There are a number of great podcasts out there that are for lawyers building a law practice, how to uh, build a more successful, more profitable practice. And in the field of trial law, which is where we work, there are also a number of trial lawyer podcasts that I listen to all the time. And they're really great. You get, first of all, it's free to listen to. It's a great way to gain information when you're doing other things. So you can kind of multitask. So I tend to listen to podcasts when I'm walking my dog, when I'm working outside um, on my property, even when I'm skiing. So it's just it's a great way to maximize time, to learn new information, and you really develop what feels like an intimate relationship with the hosts of the podcast because um, you're listening to them talk directly to you. Often the podcasts go on for 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time. So you really spend a lot of time with these people. You feel like you know them. And it's a great way to get value in listening to other people podcasts. That's also a great way to share content and value if you want to start your own podcast. So we started our own podcast, which has been fantastic. Not only are we able to put it out there for other trial lawyers to listen to and hopefully obtain some value from that, but it's really fun. I get to sit down with some of the best trial lawyers in the whole country for an hour every couple of weeks and ask them questions about an area that I'm passionate about and that is what I do for a living. So it's really great. It doesn't really cost a lot. In our case, we were able to find some sponsors, and our podcast sponsors offset the entire cost of doing the podcast. So it's really it's a break even and it's no cost to us. Another great way to market is through emailable newsletters. As you know, email is essentially free. So unlike putting uh, postage on a letter and putting it in the mailbox, you can send out thousands of emails with the click of a button, and it's essentially free. Um, there is a little bit of a cost if you're using an email program. We use MailChimp, and there are a number of different options for that. MailChimp has worked well for us, and there is a monthly subscription cost for that, but it's very inexpensive, relatively speaking. We put out two different newsletters. So our law firm, Gideon Asen newsletter, goes out once a month, and that tends to highlight cases that we're working on, um, some of the things we're doing in the public sphere in our home state. We typically have a case study in a particular medical malpractice type of case. And we also usually have uh, some pointers for law firm management and organization of the type that we're going through today in this presentation. We also put out a separate newsletter for our podcast. So for each episode, a newsletter goes out. Every 2 weeks, we go up with a new episode. So between our law firm newsletter and our podcast newsletter, we have three newsletter touch points every month, and all high quality content. We also run Facebook ads, and here's some examples of some of the different ads that we've run. Again, we really try to keep it focused on high value content. Um, we run ads for the podcast, as you can see here, um, and those podcast ads go out to a national audience. They're seen by 50 or 60,000 people per month, and generate a lot of click-throughs through to our podcast page. Um, they also generate a lot of downloads of our show, so it's been highly successful. Again, those ads are all paid for with the help of our sponsors. The Gideon Asen account um, also puts out notices about the podcast. So that's one way in which Gideon Asen is able to associate with some of the high value content that we create through the podcast. Gideon Asen also puts out its own Facebook ads independent from the podcast. and I typically focus on articles or case studies or things that we're doing relating to our core niche area of medical malpractice. You can see here on the right, this is a Facebook ad that we're now running that clicks through to a case study that's on our website illustrating how we use high-end visual animations created by our friends at the High Impact Company to illustrate and present complicated medical malpractice cases to juries. So another way of marketing is through Google marketing, and there are essentially three different areas of Google marketing. I am not an expert on this, and we have experts that we rely on to help us with this stuff. We have one company that does our SEO. We have a different company that does our Facebook and some of our Google ad campaigns. But generally speaking, there's three areas. One is search engine optimization, and the second is pay-per-click, and the third is local service advertisements. So search engine optimization is, you think about that as planting a tree or some seeds in the ground that you hope will grow into a tree. And it's really trying to plant that seed, water it, and grow it so that someday you're going to have that presence there um, that you no longer have to pay for. It's growing there. It's a full-fledged mature tree there on Google for people to see and to find. Um, with the search engine optimization, there's really two areas now I think that people are focused on. One is the Google My Business Map Pack, and that's when you're searching for something and Google shows you um, locations near where you are or near the city or township that you're searching in. So our main office is in a place called New Gloucester, Maine. It's a very rural community, and there aren't many businesses here. So even though we're essentially a brand new firm, in New Gloucester, if you were to search for medical malpractice or personal injury lawyer, we show up as the very first entry in the map pack. So we're in the 3-pack on the map pack. Um, that's where you want to be, because after that, um, you have to click to see more options. But if you're in the 3-pack there, you pop up. So the goal is to pop up in as many of the larger communities around our state as possible. And to do that, there's a whole process for how you can increase your prominence in the map pack. Um, Search engine optimization is below the map pack and below the paid advertisements. There's the organic search results. So you can see now for New Gloucester, there's some of these other attorney listing services like Justia, Law Info, and then below that there we are um, in in, uh, in the organic search. So how do you increase your prominence in the map pack and the organic search? Essentially, there's several things that you need to do. One is you have to have a website that's optimized for search engines so that so Google essentially can find it and will um, value that for search purposes. Number one. Number two, you need to have high value content. Content is really important because that's something that Google is looking at. So the more high value content you have in the area where you want to rank, the better you'll do. Number three is you want to have incoming links, sometimes called backlinks, from respectable URL addresses or other websites into your site. Think of that as an arrow pointing to your site. So if you have more high value links that are pointing to your site, then Google is going to think your site must have value because these other people are pointing to it. So it's not just a question of having inbound or backlinks, but it's the quality of those links as well. For example, if you have the Wall Street Journal pointing to your law firm, that's going to have a lot of value. So that's a process that's ongoing, building out the backlinks, increasing your content, optimizing your page for search engine. If you want to do well in SEO, you have to do all of those things. The other thing that is really important for SEO um, is the longevity, or the time in which your website has been in existence. And obviously, for a new law firm, that's something you're going to be at a disadvantage initially for that, because if you're competing with another firm that's been around for 20 years, um, you can't make up that ground on the longevity point right away. So you can focus on the other areas, and then over time, hopefully, you'll see your search engine results improve. Pay per click is another option. That's where you pay Google to list an ad, and you agree that every time somebody clicks on that advertisement, that you will pay Google a certain amount of money for each click. That can be very expensive, particularly in the high competitive areas that lawyers are looking to obtain clients in. So we elected initially not to engage in a pay-per-click campaign because, based on our research, the return on investment of the pay-per-click just wasn't there in our market for the cost of what it would have run us in order to run a pay-per-click campaign. That may change, but for now, we decided against running pay-per-click. There's another area that Google has called local service ads. And local service ads are a different way of advertising. They're a newer way. They've been in existence for a year and a half or so, and they're not available in all different, in every type of category of law. So um, it's really, they're growing it out over time. Some categories they have local service available, and some they don't. The way local service works is a little bit different from pay per click. The way it works is that you don't have to pay if someone clicks on your link. You only pay if they call you um, from the pay per click, from the local service ad itself. And the way that works is that when someone clicks on your local service ad, there's a phone number to call, and that goes through essentially a Google um, switchboard, where Google records the phone call and patches that through to your law firm. If you end up talking to somebody through one of those calls, then there's a certain cost per call. There's a way in which that's better than paying per click, because of course in pay per click, many people may click on your link but never call you at all. So now you're at least only paying for people that actually call your office. Some people may call for things that you're not even advertising for. So we do medical malpractice, personal injury, plaintiff's work. If someone called us to set up a will or some kind of a trust and estates matter, we don't do that. You can contest that with Google. And if it's not in an area where you're advertising, Google will remove the charge. So, and they have the phone call recorded so that they can document that what somebody called about. So there's a protocol for challenging calls that really are not germane to your practice area. We'll talk just a minute about outsourcing. So you can really outsource just about anything that you want to perform in a business and a law firm today. And that includes legal work. You can outsource briefs, you can outsource legal research. we elected not to outsource any of our legal work. So we don't intend to do that because that's really our bread and butter. That's where the value added proposition from our firm comes, is doing the really high